Welcome back to America's Fractured Politics. Today I have, again, one of my favorite guests, Marc Friedman. Today's topic is foreign policy. We're going to delve into Trump's foreign policy in some detail and talk about where he goes wrong and where he goes right, and we don't think he goes right very much at all. So we're going to talk about how he goes wrong and what the impact is on our present situation and on our future. So I'm going to kick it off, and I'm going to start big picture. How has America's role changed in the world under Donald Trump?
Well, first, Mark, let me say I am delighted to be sharing this platform with you. You know how much admiration I have for you, for what you're writing, and I consider you to be a good friend. To answer your question, America's role in the world, in my opinion, has changed dramatically under Trump, too. To me, the United States used to be the leader of the free world. It used to be an anchor of global stability. Countries around the world would look to America to see how we do things, and in many instances, try and replicate what it is we were doing here. Under Trump, that's flipped. In my view, we are no longer regarded with the respect that we had before Trump was reelected. I have friends in foreign countries who tell me how Trump is belittled in their countries, how Trump is privately mocked by the leaders of their countries. Trump treats foreign relations like he did real estate deals. He treats them as transactions, not policies. He doesn't treat our alliances as enduring partnerships, which, by the way, I think are very important to our long-term security. To me, it appears that our allies, like Canada, like Mexico, among our closest allies, are hedging against us now. They don't find us trustworthy. They don't find us reliable partners, and adversaries such as China, Russia, even Iran in its weakened state, North Korea, and some others are probing our system now for weaknesses, for vulnerabilities that have been created under the Trump administration. So, to me, America's place in the world has turned around, and it's a very unfortunate development, Mark.
It is an unfortunate development, and this really began in his first term, but it's accelerated now. He calls it his America First approach. He campaigned on that. And I just wonder whether or not you think it's a grand strategy or just a retreat from the world order that we spent years and decades building.
Well, first of all, I don't think that Trump is capable of constructing a grand strategy. That would require that he roll up his sleeves to understand the facts and use a high degree of intellectual ability to create that strategy. I don't believe he's capable of doing so. And I don't think that in America First he's done so. It's impulse driven nationalism. America First sounds strong. That's a strong shibboleth. But in practice, what it's doing is it's isolating us. We're walking away from institutions that we built. We're losing influence inside those international institutions. We're giving space to other countries, especially China, including this week, to take our place in those institutions. and to rewrite the rules. America First is not a grand strategy. But I have a question for you.
Fire away.
Uh, I have, well, for my full adult life, had great respect for NATO. Trump, as you know, has now consistently questioned NATO's value. He even said that we might not defend NATO allies who don't pay up. How dangerous do you think that is?
This is supremely dangerous. NATO has always functioned best when it's been a true alliance between countries, like-minded countries, the countries that formed NATO and the countries that have since been added. And its power lies in its credibility, the sense that an attack on one via Article 5 is an attack on all. But the moment that commitment sounds conditional, deterrence weakens. Now, Moscow listens closely. China listens closely. If they doubt U.S. resolve, the risk of miscalculation rises. There are already several countries in Europe that are terrified that Russia is going to repeat its invasion of Ukraine in their territory. I don't personally believe Russia has the strength to do that. I think it's going to take all Russia has to survive this Ukraine.
Do you think that? Do you think that Trump's consistent reluctance to give Ukraine the weapons that it says it desperately needs suggests to adversaries like Russia and particularly China that we won't stand up for allies, even though Ukraine is not a NATO country? We will not have the backs of our allies. And perhaps that even suggests to China that were it to move on Taiwan, we would not be there with a full throated defense.
That is what I think is likely to happen. Trump basically treats everybody as a freeloader. The rest of the world are freeloaders, sponging off the United States. He exhibits absolutely no understanding of the world alliance system, and he exhibits no understanding of the threat posed by China. His attitude toward China is ridiculous. First there are tariffs, then there are no tariffs. First there's a deal, then there's no deal. First we're dealing on rare earth minerals, and then we're not. We have this summit between him and Xi that resulted in complete agreement. Well, if there was complete agreement, then why did he feel the need to act against China last week? This is foreign policy by the seat of your pants. And I don't think anybody is going to trust us anymore as long as Trump is president because he's so erratic. What the world seems to be doing right now is catering to Trump and humoring him because they know he's mentally unbalanced. And they're trying to treat him like a very volatile piece of explosive because he is very much inclined toward blowing things up whenever he feels like it. And we now have, this new nuclear testing program that he's reintroduced. After years and years and years of trying to limit nuclear testing, we're back at it again. These signals that are being sent to countries suggest that we're not only not a reliable ally, we're a danger.
Well, one of the patterns I've observed is that foreign leaders are giving Trump gifts, are treating him like royalty because they know that is what he craves. In fact, last week in South Korea, the new president of South Korea presented Trump with a ornamental crown for him to take with him when he returns to America. I wouldn't be surprised to see pictures coming out of the White House with Trump wearing that crown. And that, I guess, gets to the No Kings protests that took place a week ago. Let me ask this question, Mark. You and I are both lawyers. I'm retired, you're practicing. And there's a new law that says presidents cannot unilaterally pull us out of NATO. Does that actually protect the NATO alliance?
Legally, yes, it does. It makes it very difficult to withdraw. But from a political standpoint, a president can still undermine NATO, and I'm thinking of Trump, obviously, simply by refusing to cooperate or withholding U.S. support in crises. He can simply decide not to abide by Article 5. You can hollow out an alliance without formally quitting it, and that's what he's doing. He's shown a modicum of cooperation in this term as opposed to his last term. He's taking credit for the Europeans ponying up more money, which they were going to do anyway. So there's actually some sign that he's prepared to cooperate at least on some level. But the fact that he won't help Ukraine is concerning, because it makes you wonder whether he would help another NATO member country, a NATO member country, not Ukraine, which is if it were to run into trouble. Theoretically, you think that he'd feel obliged to do so, but Trump doesn't feel obliged to do anything.
Yeah, I agree with you. You made a very good point that Trump can hollow out an alliance without formally quitting it. He's very good about hollowing out our institutions. For example, he has hollowed out the Department of Education. It has not formally been terminated, but when you hollow it out the way he's done, it is tantamount to a termination of an institution. And that may be what he is doing internationally with some of these actions that he's taking.
I think that's true. Let me switch gears a little bit and talk about Trump's favorite policy, which is tariffs and the ensuing trade wars that have plagued us over the course of the last month. He's been very confrontational. He's imposed tariffs on China, on Europe, on allies. What's the long-term impact of that approach?
Well, short term, it probably played out well domestically, although that seems to be changing
I
now.
agree.
For example, with the complaints by the soybean farmers or the beef farmers. Long term, uh, tariffs fracture international trust. And that's what I see happening. Allies begin cutting side deals. They create parallel supply chains. They even explore military industrial ties without us. It undercuts our leverage in both economic and security terms. What is happening between the US and Canada because of Trump's trade policy and tariffs, I find to be particularly deplorable. Canada is probably our closest ally, not just geographically, but also culturally, politically, militarily, and more. To use tariffs against our closest allies, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, and others, is, in my mind, and I'm not an international economist, not only bad economic policy, it's bad political policy as well.
So how does this weaken our hand globally? I mean, surely it does.
Well, when trade becomes a weapon, which is the way Trump looks at it, other countries adapt to this. They build their own resilience away from you. Uh, Canada is doing that. Mexico is doing that. Other allies of the US are doing that. They're taking their trade elsewhere. Over time, that is going to mean less United States influence in international affairs. Fewer partners, fewer allies who depended on us are going to continue that dependence. And in fact, they are already starting to resent America. That's a problem for us. And, let me ask you a question, changing subjects, something that bothers me tremendously. Uh, the Trump administration, again, has pulled out of the World Health Organization. It's pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. What do you think the fallout is going to be of us repudiating these agreements that the U.S. had entered into?
Fallout's already begun. I've done a lot of my work in the health area, in health law, and there are several international organizations that functioned under the auspices of the WHO and the Food and Agriculture Organization that guarantee food safety and the safety of other products. We've withdrawn from those. So we have no say anymore in global food safety standards. That's a problem. FDA has been gutted. So that's a corollary problem. We lose access to global disease surveillance. After having had a pandemic and with the risk of another one happening, that's catastrophic. The warnings will be very few and far between. And in an environment when pandemics can reach us within days, the result could be catastrophic. On climate, it's our credibility. The U.S. once led global action, and now we're seen as an obstacle. Both moves make us less secure, not more. We are viewed as being an obstacle to climate change because Trump has made it very clear that he believes in fossil fuels, that he believes in destroying windmills and all of the other cockamamie ideas he has. So the world looks at us and says, these people aren't serious. And the danger is that they will continue to believe we're not serious even after Trump leaves, because there's always the fear that a new Trump will replace him someday.
But here's my concern about these issues that we are discussing at the moment. There will be additional pandemics. I have spoken to virologists. I have spoken to epidemiologists. COVID is just the beginning. There will be more pandemics. That is a worldwide problem. Climate change is a worldwide problem. If we continue to withdraw unto ourselves away from the international surveillance and regulation of infectious disease prevention and climate change, we are going to be hurting ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and future generations. Up until Trump, the U.S. had been a world leader in the prevention of infectious diseases, epidemics. We had been a world leader in working to ameliorate climate change. We've now withdrawn from those positions. And in my view, that makes us less safe, less secure, and by far less respected by other nations in the world. So is this just a matter of moral leadership or lack of moral leadership? Or are there practical risks to America first insofar as international problems like pandemics and climate change and nuclear proliferation are concerned?
I think it's both. It's certainly a matter of moral leadership. We're not viewed as serious people. And it's a practical risk because of the reasons you just articulated. Now, we have Robert Kennedy, who's basically gutted the mRNA vaccine program. So we are not prepared for another COVID pandemic, and we're not prepared to do the research necessary for a new pandemic. This is catastrophic. And I don't think people realize just how catastrophic it's likely to be, because we're behind the curve and we won't be able to supply enough vaccines for people who need them. So that's a practical risk.
Well,
Now, when we walk away from these systems, we don't insulate ourselves, we blind ourselves. Viruses and rising seas don't respect borders. They're a function of bad policy, and they accelerate an already terrible problem. And unless we find a way to arrest the excesses of this administration, the new administration, when there is one, God willing, in a very short order, is going to have its hands full trying to clean up the damage and do backfill for what has been done by Trump.
Just to digress, you and I agree that the Trump administration, even in the first year, is causing a great deal of damage. And we can expect that this is going to continue for another 3 years. It may be ameliorated somewhat if the Democrats in November of 2026 get control of one or both houses of Congress. But there certainly is profound damage that's being done in many different ways. We've touched upon them. What do you think the prospect is of correcting, solving, reducing the damage that has occurred and that will occur over the course of the rest of the Trump administration?
I'm very pessimistic. I don't believe this man can be swayed or influenced by anybody. I think it's going to take what you described, a regain of control of either the House, the Senate, or both by the Democrats to put a brake on this, to keep him from indulging in his worst instincts. But he can do so much damage. It's only been 10 months. You know, we're looking at a 48-month term. I mean, we have a long ways to go. And unless this man is removed from office through impeachment or through the 25th Amendment, I fear we're going to have a very difficult time putting Humpty Dumpty back together when the Democrats take over again. I really have tremendous fear that some of this damage may be irreversible for generations. I wish I was so pessimistic, but I am.
I do share that concern with you. I look at my adult children, and I particularly look at my grandchildren, who range in the ages from 3 to 15. And I shake my head in fear and wonder what their world will be like when they're in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and older because of the actions that are being taken now by the Trump administration. And I participated in the No Kings rally a week ago. And when I did so, I was thinking almost throughout the entire protest about my grandchildren and someday my great-grandchildren, doing whatever it is I can do as one person to prevent further damage from occurring. So let me ask a question of you on another issue. Trump has torn up the Iran nuclear deal. He's torn up the INF Treaty, the Open Skies Treaty. Why should ordinary Americans be concerned with what's happening with the abrogation by America of these treaties?
It should be deeply concerning because although it may not be obvious to the average American on a day-to-day basis, the long-term impact of these decisions are deep. They're going to be felt for a very long time unless they're reversed. Take the Iranian nuclear deal. We had control over Iran's nuclear capability for a while. Now, it may have been It may have been diminished dramatically during the course of those raids. And so that may not be the issue it was before, but they're still trying. And without a framework in place where we can watch what they're doing and observe and monitor them, we're flying blind. The other treaties are the same thing. They benefit us economically, they benefit us socially, they benefit us in a whole variety of areas. And although Americans don't see them on a day-to-day basis, they'll feel them later because we'll ultimately be non-competitive. So I have real trepidation about his tearing up all of these deals because he's undoing work that was done painstakingly by other administrations, and he's doing it cavalierly without any concern for what the ultimate effect will be on the American people.
Well, I think this gets back to a point that I made at the outset of this podcast. There is no policy. Everything is done on a transactional basis. And we have a president who, at least in my opinion, has no filter on his mouth. He just talks about whatever happens to cross his mind in the moment. That's not the sound way to create short-term or long-term policies for America. And that impetuousness, that childlike behavior, in my opinion, is going to continue for the rest of his term, although perhaps in some ways Congress or the courts will be able to, if not stop it, reduce the damage that's being done. Yesterday, Trump said, well, we're going to start nuclear testing again. And I was rather stunned to see that statement. We know that Russia is doing nuclear testing. China may be doing nuclear testing. North Korea is doing nuclear testing. Now America is going to be joining that as well. Mark, does this put us at the risk of a new arms race?
It already has. The arms race is on now. He's basically joined it, and he's put us all at risk. People forget how many nuclear powers there are now. There are far too many. Back in the 60s, we had control over nuclear arms. Only a few countries had possession of them. And the mutual deterrence capacity of the arms races that existed then ensured that neither side would act precipitously because of mutual assured destruction. We don't have that anymore. Any one of these regional powers can take steps to launch a nuclear missile, and we have no way of stopping them or checking them. On a practical level, we're going to be spending more money. We're going to be fostering instability, and we're going to be putting more pressure on an already strained defense budget. It's insecurity at a premium price, and it's unacceptable. And I was frankly shocked to see him do it, although nothing he does should shock me. But that one was a shock. It came out of the blue. I didn't see this coming. I didn't have any notion that he was going to do anything like this.
You know, just to go backward a little bit, for me, I published an article about a year ago on whether the human race will live well into the future. And I posited that there are a number of risks to humanity that could very well wipe us out. Certainly, pandemics could wipe us out. There are some experts who believe COVID is just child's play compared to what's coming in the future. Climate change, if unchecked, could result in the end of human existence. There could be a celestial event, could be. we get hit by a huge meteor, something happens, Earth is destroyed. That's possible. And some futurists suggest that that may be happening. But the fourth potential cause to the end of humanity, in my opinion, would be nuclear proliferation and the misuse of that technology by bad players.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about. And just like you, it scares me to think about the world being in another nuclear arms race. Uh, so
Be a lot less well controlled.
yeah, that's my view of it.
That's my view of it as well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about strategy, the grand strategy a little bit. Critics say that all of this creates a vacuum and that China and Russia are eager to fill. And we've talked about this earlier, but what do you think about that? Do you think that the Chinese and Russians are already acting?
I believe deep down in my soul that America First is a pullback from our position of leadership in the world on many of the issues that we've discussed. And I have no doubt that at this point, China and Russia, particularly China, are eager to take our place as the leader of the world with different institutions, different technologies, different uh, uh, armed services capabilities. There's no doubt in my mind about that. When the U.S. withdraws, others are very eager and capable of stepping in. China's now setting standards in the United Nations to build vast influence in Africa. I read about that frequently, and in the Pacific region. China is representing itself as the reliable partner. I can understand that. When we enter into agreements, then we withdraw, then we re enter into those agreements, then we withdraw again. We become the unreliable party. We've ceded the moral high ground and the diplomatic floor. Our lack of consistency in foreign policy is what creates room for others to step into our shoes and take our place on the international stage. I think it's a tragic development.
It's starting to look like America first is America alone, and I've come to believe that we've been abandoned by the rest of the world because they don't trust us anymore, and I don't think Trump appreciates just how dangerous that is and how inimical it is to America's interests over the long term.
Well, Trump, from everything I read, doesn't read briefing papers.
Doesn't read anything.
He doesn't read reports. He doesn't read anything that presents to him the facts on the ground that are happening around the world. That's a problem. We have a factually ignorant president. And to me, America First, which, as you know, comes from the 1930s and the 1940s, America First is America alone. We're withdrawing from treaties. We're refusing to defend our allies. We're not providing arms to Ukraine. If China moves on Taiwan, it's a pretty good bet we're not going to be there shoulder to shoulder with Taiwan. America alone is really a return to the isolation of the past, of the distant past. And that's how the world sees it. The world sees that America First means America alone. Our word no longer carries the same weight that it did. And fewer allies are willing to take risks alongside of us. Power without trust is not power. And that's the direction we're going in, if in fact we're not there now. Power without trust is not power, it's just noise. And we're making noise now, and that may be more so the case over the next several years under the Trump administration. Uh, let's return to a subject we discussed a few minutes ago, which is the damage that's being caused by the Trump administration in so many different areas. It's hard to even list all the areas. I know that when I wake up in the morning, one of the first things that occurs to me, Mark, is to say, "Oi, what damage was done overnight?" And I look at the news, and almost invariably, I find some damage to America has been done. If a future administration wants to repair this damage that is so vast, where would you suggest that it start?
It's going to have to start through the painstaking effort of rebuilding relationships with our allies. The question is, will anybody believe us? We've seen Trump once. We've seen him come back. I think there's a real distrust of the American people. And unless he is repudiated in 2026, and the Republicans are soundly repudiated in 2028 in a manner that suggests that there'll be a very long time before they're ever reconstituted as a viable party, which I think should happen because they need some introspection. People won't trust us. The fear of somebody coming back up and winning a race using Trump's policies as a campaign gambit would suggest that the American people themselves are the ones that can't be trusted, and that's a fatal problem. But go ahead.
Can I just follow up on that? I just read today that, and this is not the first time in a poll, that J.D. Vance is the likely Republican candidate for president in 2028. Do you think that there is any chance that we would regain the world respect, or that the damage that has been caused by Trump would be remediated if J.D. Vance is elected president?
I'm going to go out on a limb and say right now that J.D. Vance is less likely to see the White House than I am to be a center for the Boston Celtics.
Well, I hope you're right, because I know what your height is.
Yes. That's why I said it. There is no way that J.D. Vance is going to be elected president of the United States for several reasons. Number one, he's a lightweight. Number two, although he has incredible financial backing, he has baggage up the wazoo. The third issue is that by then, people are going to be so sick of the Republicans that any Republican candidate, whether it's Marco Rubio or J.D. Vance or anybody else, is going to be operating at a tremendous disadvantage. I don't see it. Now, I could be proven wrong, and I hope to God I'm not, but I don't see it. Let me ask one final question. If this continues, what's the single biggest risk we face?
I think there is a risk that started to show itself in the last election, and that's complacency. So many people stayed home in 2024 and did not vote. And I'm concerned that that could be the beginning of a trend where there is general complacency throughout the U.S. population. The belief that America is a dominant power is not automatic. It's not. It's something we have to work for. It's something we have to vote for. It's something we have to talk about every day. Our influence throughout the world will fade when our greatness is taken for granted and we become complacent about the future of our democracy.
The rest of the world
We
will move
can
on without
see
us.
that, well, that's right. We can see today, in part because of Trump's America First policy. In fact, I might say primarily because of the American First policy, the world is reorganizing, and it's going to do so with us or without us. The question that we're facing is, do we want a seat at the table? Do we want to be able to participate, if not lead, in world events? Or are we just going to sit there and take the bill when it's over? Complacency is a very serious threat. I am hopeful, Mark, that in next week's elections for the governors of New Jersey and Virginia, and in the 2026 elections for the U.S. House of Representatives and the third of the Senate, that there is a blue wave, that those independents and Democrats who sat home in 2024 get off their behinds and get out and vote. And that Republicans who are disaffected with the current Republican Party, like my neighbor who lives across the street, will get out and vote along the Democratic line.
Or stay home.
Vote. Voter participation is perhaps the most important thing that we can do to prevent the complacency that we're talking about.
I've written several times that the way to get that blue wave is an overwhelming turnout by Democrats and independents. It has to be overwhelming because he's going to cheat. They're going to cheat. They're going to do their very best to cheat.
Yeah.
We have to overwhelm with votes. We need a blue wave, and we need people coming out to vote. And I think people are angry right now, and they're going to be even more angry by next year because the damage he's doing is lasting, and it's going to get worse. And I would not be shocked to find us in a recession by next spring.
Well, I concur with everything you've said, and I am deeply worried. And I am doing what little bit I can do to turn this around by doing podcasts with you, by writing articles like you on a daily basis, by speaking to people who I know, and by remaining as current as I could possibly remain on the events of the day to understand the destruction that's taking place in this country under the Trump regime.
Well, that covers just about everything we wanted to cover today. We did a very comprehensive trip around the world. I don't know what we solved, but we've laid out the problem, I think, in a fashion that will give people some food for thought. Mark, it's been a pleasure, as it always is. And we'll do this again soon.
And it's been a delight for me, Mark, and I look forward to more podcasts because even sitting here listening to you, I learned things.
Well, the feeling is mutual. I learned things too. I learned things from your writing. I love your book reviews. I love your conversations with historical figures. It's just a great pleasure. So until next week, sorry, go ahead.
I said thank you.
You're welcome. Until next week, this has been America's Fractured Politics.